We can't assume that everybody knows the definitions of anxiety, depression, or being in a state of depression or a state of anxiety, right? There's the clinical side of things where your hormones are imbalanced or you just can't cope and you need, medication to help you. And then there's just life is hard and a period of time doesn't feel good to our body or our autonomic nervous system.
When it comes to influencing our mental state, few things are as important or as impactful as our environment. Whether it's a classroom, a workplace, or home, our environments shape the way we think, feel, and live. That's why, today, I spoke to Miss Alicia Mckoy, a social scientist, author, speaker, and entrepreneur who has dedicated her life and work to understanding the impact of chronic stress and the importance of self-care. She is the founder and CEO of Peak Mind, a platform designed to educate individuals on rewiring their response to stress, finding balance, and thriving in both life and work. In our conversation, we dive into the hidden impact of stress on young people, the habits and mindsets that can help ground you when life feels overwhelming, and how we can build better environments in our communities that support mental health and well-being, not just bare minimum survival. My name is Yuvan Rase, and every 2 weeks I sit down with people from all walks of life who have something meaningful to offer. Lessons, stories, and honest reflections on personal growth. These conversations aren't about having all the answers. They're about learning from people who lived through moments of loss, change, and renewal. Welcome to Lived Words. So you are the founder and CEO of a company called Peak Mind. Can you tell me what that is?
Yeah, sure. So Peak Mind is like a GPS for finding your health and happiness. We're a SaaS-based platform and app in essence that stores a lot of really good, yummy things that people can ingest, and learn about to find their way back to health and happiness.
Got it. Okay. And how does that work? Could you go in a little bit more detail on like how does that what exactly is it that you guys do?
Definitely. So we sell to companies on behalf of their user base. We decided that we wanted to tackle working adults, high performing professionals that don't necessarily have the skills or the learned behavior in how to lower chronic stress and to empower themselves to thrive and have better working days. And so we sell to companies, they buy our app and our VR, AR tool set, and they give it to their employees so that their employees have access 24/7 to learn about mental well-being coping skills, stressors, how to overcome them, and how to feel better and happy.
Got it. Why is that why is that important? Why should we be thinking about chronic stress in the workplace?
Yeah, well, it's life is stressful.
Of
So if you
course.
have
Yeah.
if you have a brain, you have some level of stress, and the more you continue on into careers, new challenges and moments and experiences come up that may cause stressful times. And most Americans and people around the world have chronic stress, which just means that stress, in essence, the hormone, the chemical aspect of it should last 20 seconds, right? Somebody cuts you off in traffic, you have a slight spike in adrenaline, right? You freak out a little bit and your body should want to typically calm back down and regulate. Most of us are living in chronic stress, which just means we're turning that moment into drama. And now that drama is keeping our blood pressure high or our adrenaline up because we're replaying it, reliving it, and we're telling the story and we're exaggerating or we're reporting it truthfully. But all of that continues that stress a lot of times into chronic stress. And we just have so many moments of those that we felt it was important to really help people because a lot of people don't understand how much chronic stress they have in their body. And if you
Yeah.
look at the World Health Organization or the CDC or the last Surgeon General of the United States, they all talk about how stress is one of the leading causes of death in America and one of the leading comorbidities of disease and distress.
Hmm. Okay. Is that like level of stress, I suppose, in people today in society, is that because of is that like a modern thing? Is that because of the way that we live now? Has that always kind of been a human trait? I would assume not, right? Because we're designed for it to only last 40 seconds.
As humans, we've always carried adrenaline. As cavemen, primal brain was to survive. So we always had some level of stress. There was less environmental factors, right? Chasing a bear, you also didn't have your social media chiming in and a bully telling you that you're too slow and the bear's going to get you. You didn't have kind of all that social interaction and people looking at you, right? That caveman was probably alone, right? Nobody saw. They just knew if he came back with the whatever he attacked or captured. So I think that yes, stress has always been there, and our brains have, our primal brain is actually one of the oldest parts of our body. And so, yes, it's evolved, but it hasn't evolved a ton. And so, it's always been negatively predispositioned, which means that we have to, survival instincts, take it over first and foremost. And so we've always had that protection brain, which is sometimes negative. And so training our brain to become more positive is just something that we haven't done as a society, right? When was the last time somebody said, hey, are your thoughts positive? What percent of your day is positive versus negative rumination? And how much stress are you carrying? Is it for 7 hours of the day? We haven't gotten to the point of our society to really measure it. And so now we've got all this external stimuli added onto our lives, social media, bullying, the world is just, we have TVs right in every room of our house now, so we can see the news. It may not be that there's more negative stuff happening in the world, we just have more access to it. And so
Right.
all of that has been put upon us, and our brain necessarily hasn't evolved to be able to handle all of it.
Right. I think, and you mentioned that the idea of like almost like pressures, right? I think social pressures being a thing, expectations being a thing, and I think the way that we think about each other in society is different because social media, because like, oh, we can see all these people who appear to be, successful and have all these great things and living their best lives. And it's like, man, I got to work every day and I'm tired. And it kind of builds that, frustration. Uh, and then you're stressed like, oh, I have to get to this level where everyone else is. And you're kind of stuck, right? And you're dealing with this ongoing feeling of self-doubt, and then that becomes stress and constant anxiety.
For
I think
sure.
that's just a big part of the modern world today. How
Definitely.
can we, yeah, how can we combat stress? Like if let's say, okay, I know I'm dealing with chronic stress. Um, Dr. McCoy told me so. So what do I what do I do um,
Yeah.
to to deal with that, to get better, to help myself?
So stress is so vast of a topic. I like to say that there's hundreds or thousands of ways to overcome stress in your life. First is to understand yourself, to acknowledge what's stressing you out, label it, name it, pinpoint it, figure it out. Most of us don't pause long enough to even figure that out. So first would be pause and see what's going on in your life and what's affecting me. What feelings and emotions am I having? Do I like them? Do I dislike them? And label them so that you understand it. And some people may need to pause there and research what that feeling is or what it means, because we can't assume that everybody knows the definitions of anxiety, depression, or being in a state of depression or a state of anxiety, right? There's the clinical side of things where your hormones are imbalanced or you just can't cope and you need, medication to help you. And then there's just life is hard and a period of time doesn't feel good to our body or our autonomic nervous system. And so we've
Hmm.
got to figure out, how do I step out of this feeling and into a better feeling? And so once you decide what it is and determine how you want to move out of that state, then it varies, right? If some people like to jog and run, work out, move their body, dance, that may be a form of getting the stress and the chronic stress level down to a normalized level. It may be having a critical conversation with somebody, maybe somebody that you have to see every day, whether it's in class or in school or at work or in your family, causes you chronic stress every day. Maybe it's
Yeah.
you have to set boundaries and figure out how you can now work with this person while still respecting your nervous system and your emotions and keep them safe. And so there's hundreds and hundreds of ways that people can choose to move from chronic stress to just a normalized level of stress, because it's never going to stop, right?
Right.
But it's
Right.
just how long we let it linger in our body and what we do about it to not let it happen again, or to move out of that feeling into a better feeling.
Okay. Okay. Um, I think sometimes we think about success as as like an achievement, right? As like if I, get these grades, if I do this thing, if I complete this project, if I get this promotion, then I'm successful, I've achieved, right? Doesn't matter if I'm stressed, it doesn't matter if I don't feel great, right? Look at my numbers, look at my statistics. I'm doing great, I've pushed through, right? All is well, or not.
I don't know. You could hit that success in a goal or a grade, but is success your heart's worn out? Your capillaries, your nervous system is so frayed that you're in adrenal fatigue. You can't, you have pimples, throughout your body. You have shingles. You've got all these negative things. Then you have to ask yourself, was that grade or was that whatever project worth your body health or your mindset health, right? Maybe now you're in a state of depression because you worked through that for, and you plugged along, but you didn't take care of yourself.
Right. Right. And then later on, it's like you can't do the things that you want to do and are able to do because you've now limited yourself physically and
Correct.
mentally, and you're just, kind of have this burden.
For sure.
Yeah. I want to kind of shift a little bit to talking about stress in kind of sort of an organized fashion in teams and communities. Um, it's part of what Peakmon is doing is right working with companies, working with to build better teams, right? To build groups where people are able to be less stressed and more effective and happier. And I'm just so curious as into what in your mind, what is the importance of communities, teams? What role can those groups play in combating stress? I mean, experienced by our peers, experienced by ourselves, experienced by those around us.
Yeah, well, stress comes from two places. Inside, how we grew up, the learned behavior, trauma that we've absorbed, lack of coping skills, our internal feelings and emotions, and then externally from the things that we see every day, that we experience, that we walk into. And so teams and communities are huge, because that's most of our stress, right? Comes from when we walk into a new room or we enter a new team and we don't feel like we belong, or we have imposter syndrome, or we don't mesh well with the personality of other teammates. And so there's a lot of factors about community, whether it's in a classroom setting or your family or peer group, that can really determine how you feel about yourself or what you absorb, right? The stress load that was put upon you by the group. So it's a complicated question, but it definitely plays
Sure.
a major role in how we feel each day and what stress we carry.
Yeah. I guess how can we, in those groups, in those communities, be better supportive for ourselves and for the other members of our teams?
Yeah, so learning about yourself is first and foremost, because, I always like to say put your oxygen mask on first. If we're not
Okay.
okay, it's rare that we can do quality work and quality teaming with other people. And so show up for yourself. Self-care, yes, is one thing, but also setting your own boundaries and expectations and knowing what goals you have in life, so that when you enter a group situation, you don't sacrifice your own, purpose and passion. You can shine them and bring those as skills to the group and say, hey, my purpose is speaking about mental well-being. If at any point in this teaming or, opportunity it comes up, or if anybody needs advice, please, feel free to lean in on me. So knowing yourself helps to show up authentically, which helps to build trust amongst others, which is probably one of the, fundamental core pieces of working with others. And so that, I would say, is first and foremost. And the fact that we only have, control over ourselves. we can offer,
Yeah.
suggestions and offer tools for others to do better or to make improvement or work together better, but they may not accept it. And so we can definitely impact, we can change ourselves if we choose to, right? It's an intention. But then giving suggestion to others, I do like to say, if, there's other people that you want to gently nudge in a positive direction because maybe they're not teaming well or they don't realize that they have a personality problem and it's affecting the team relationship, I like to say, gently nudge them, encourage them, give them advice. There's a great book. I think it's 101 Tough Conversations to Have. And in teams, if somebody isn't confident in how to approach others, I would say out of the 101, ways to, things to approach, that book probably covers the common ones that happen in the workplace. And so it really helps to empower you to have a voice so that you can offer, creative criticism or guidance to others in a group.
Right. Right. Is there, I think the idea that we often concern ourselves with things that we cannot control is such a big thing. This idea that like, yeah, we can only really control ourselves, right? We can help ourselves. We're stressed, then we can work on ourselves and we can offer a helping hand. But in the reality of the situation is that there's not a whole lot we can do to help other people, become happier and relieve their stress other than giving them the tools, giving them, the advice that we've learned. Do you feel like that's something that you see a lot and that people are so caught up in how can I help everybody? How can I make the team better? When it's like, can you help yourself and then and then build from there?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's easy to see flaws in others, right? Because we see them with our eyes physically and ears. And so we're witnessing the world around us. And so you can watch and see and spot trends in other people. Sometimes it's hard to sit in front of a mirror or to go inward enough to say, how did I act in that situation? How did I show up for them? What did I say? And I think so sometimes it's hard for us to replay our role in in the world and in relation with others. And so I think that's probably why it's easier to just say, oh, let me go help somebody else. And we get dopamine hits, right? We get oxytocin if we help somebody and they say, oh my gosh, Alicia, you're so awesome. And then they give you a big hug, right? We just got a hit of oxytocin and dopamine. And so those reward chemicals are addictive. And so we're going to lean to get more of that. Doing the inward work, when does somebody give you a hug? They may not know that you just processed 10 really tough things in your mind because it's internal. So unless you offer it to them and say, hey, I just did some really hard inner work, and that person is in a place to see you and hear you and value you and high five you or hug you, we don't necessarily get that same addictive hit, right? And
Yeah.
so that's another learned behavior. We don't know. I sometimes train people and executives to brag. I say that bragging is okay if it's done with purpose and intention and clarity, and you're just trying to convey information. Because a lot of times we assume that people know. We assume that our family knows that we've just struggled with something. We assume that our friends and our loved ones or people around us know. But a lot of times they don't, right? People are busy in their own world, they're self absorbed, and they may not have any clue or know how to respond to you, even if they do have a clue that you just worked through some really challenging stuff. They may not know the way that you want to be seen, heard, and valued and appreciated for that.
Right. And I think you mentioned trust, and I think that that's such a big, right, that ties into that idea of trust where it's I think we think about trust as like I can share my deepest, darkest secrets with you, and that obviously is a part of it. But I think there's also an aspect of trust where it's like I can say, "Hey, look, I did this cool thing. Be proud of me." And the person will be like, "Yes, I'm so proud of you." And I think that that is part of having trust in a relationship where it's like, yeah, it's kind of awkward to be like, "Hey, look at what I did," and it's like,
Yeah.
okay, right? But if there's if that relationship is set up in a certain way, and you have that trust in a relationship with someone, or with a team or with a group of people, you can bring forward those successes and say like, "Look, I've really worked through this, and I worked really hard on this, and I was able to build something," and people would cheer you on, and you get that dopamine hit, you get that
For sure.
that sort of reward, right,
Yeah.
for the work that you put in.
Yeah, and psychological safety is kind of the
Hmm.
definition of that. That's lacking in so many teams and groups. Again, just because it's not a learned behavior. Nobody sat us
Right.
down as kids and said, okay, when we go to fifth grade and sixth grade and we start working in groups, we're going to keep psychological safety in mind. We talk about, okay, keep your hands to yourself. Don't, take somebody else's share, which is
Yeah.
fundamental principles, but then we kind of lose that community learning, and we don't learn how to really see and appreciate others, to respect them, unless you have a really good teacher, and I think that's so few
Yeah.
and far between.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Do you almost feel like we err on the side of teaching selflessness to such an extreme that people either become very drawn in and like I have to be super not selfless because otherwise I'm going to lose parts of me, or they become super selfless and then they lose the selfishness that kind of binds us together and keeps us
Yeah.
whole and able to be proud of ourselves.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic observation. I think you're probably right. And we learn self-care, but even that's kind of just the basic at the core definition. Self-care is just, are you getting up every day? Are you putting on clean clothes? Are you taking a bath? Right? We exaggerate it to be, are you pampering yourself? Which is at least good that we're having those starter conversations about, are you going and getting your hair done or nails or doing something that fulfills you? So we're starting to have more of those conversations, but we just haven't naturalized that and learned how to move kind of beyond that self-care, self-preservation into self-promotion and all that type of stuff.
Hmm. And I think you mentioned the idea of fulfillment, and I think that's something I've talked about before on this podcast. Dr. Mark Kielberger and I spoke about fulfillment, and it's this interesting thing that we sometimes we believe that our fulfillment comes from I'm going to feel better if I help other people. And sometimes that's true, right? You get that dopamine hit, but then you go home and it's like, oh, I have so much to do and I'm stressed and I'm tired and it didn't last, right? There's no
Yeah,
lasting thing because there's nowhere to go home to. There's no safety at home. It's like I feel great when I'm out there helping people, but I can't come home and feel good, right? And keep preserve that sense of joy or happiness or fulfillment that I get from doing all the things. I could go out and be a philanthropist and then I come back and I'm like, man, everything sucks again.
yeah, for sure. And I think that's that we don't maybe have purpose and that kind of
Mm,
higher spiritual whatever awakening, whatever you want to call it, that bigger vision that's bigger than us. I think if you have that self purpose, your own passion, you understand it, you have clarity, you have awareness of it, and you're preserving it, then I think you would come home to self and have joy and peace no matter what's happening around you. I think that's the goal, which is the opposite of chronic stress is living in peace and everything is amazing. Whatever your core values are, those are being met, and you don't need anybody or anything or any product to make you feel good about that because that's so internal.
right, right, absolutely. Uh, do you feel like you have a sense of fulfillment and self-purpose?
I definitely do. It's out of the 150 things I teach people, and I've done this for the last 10 years. Purpose is the number one thing that I say wakes me up every day, keeps me going, gets me through the hard days, helps me overcome the barriers, and want to try again. If I didn't have that, yeah, I would be, chronically stressed and fatigued and
Yeah,
not saying that I don't have stress in my life, but when I do have stress and I get into disarray, I sit back and I meditate on what's happening, everything we just talked about, what's annoying me, and how is it in opposition of my purpose and passion? Because that disalignment, right, is trying to show us that something's off. A boundary is being hit that we don't like. Something is happening that's, not in alignment with ourselves.
right. How have you been able to reach that point where you feel like you can say, I have a sense of purpose, I have a sense of fulfillment? Because it's not
Lots
something
of
that just
years of
happens
work.
overnight. Yeah.
No, no, lots of years of work. I say it started over 20 years ago. I went to a class where it was the first time that the coach of the class challenged us to consider what wounded us or who hurt us in life. And that class was kind of the spark of saying, oh, why am I hurt? What did hurt, at this point in my life? And that was my early 20s, and so I was able to start that journey of reflection and going inward and saying, if I could ask somebody for to give me an apology, who would it be and why? And then realizing the behavior that the person did, or their role in it, my role in it. And that just started me down the self-healing journey. And it's taken years and lots of different methodologies of healing and training. And I talk about probably 20 of them in my book that I have done for myself. But now on the other side of understanding my purpose and passion, I still need to maintain it. So I still need reflection time and to take pause in my day every day through meditation and mindfulness, and really go inward and say, how am I feeling? What's going on? How much stress am I carrying? So the journey never stops, unfortunately.
Right. I mean, I think that, I mean, you're a CEO. You're busy, right? You got all sorts of things going on. How are you making time to do these? You know, I
It's
think I feel like that's the big thing, and people are like, oh, I don't have time to do it. How do you make time?
We all have time. We just have to change our behaviors and our habits. And so I say it starts with your morning routine, realizing we have plenty of time. We do, if we're all being, honest. If we're working 8 hours, that's great. We have another 8 hours for solid sleep, and we have 8 hours the rest of the day to do whatever, and yes, some of that could be eaten up by driving, cooking dinner, but there's still time. And so yes, if you're working 16 hours, then maybe you need to reflect on, do I need to cut back those hours so that I have time for self? So my daily mantra and visualization sessions that I do is, how do I want to spend my 8 hours of self time, right? It's just the 8 hours that I have to do whatever. How do I want to spend the 8 hours of myself sharing myself as Alicia, the CEO? And how do I want to spend my 8 hours of sleep? So at least every day I can reflect on, did I sleep well? Because I think sleep is fundamental to our bodies staying healthy and happy. Nothing goes well if you're tired, right? Our brains need that sleep to be able to regenerate, to stay healthy, to be creative. And so I every day I try to think about those things. And even if I don't do it every day, if it's every 3 days, then I try and reset and give myself grace that the last 2 days I was busy and I just didn't get time to do it.
Right. Right. And that becomes balance for you when you kind of have those um, almost like guidelines
Hmm.
of like, there's the three things that I have to check in with myself on.
Yeah,
Make sure that I'm doing, I gotta sleep, I gotta show up at work for 8 hours, and I gotta, take care of myself and do all the other things that I need to do for 8 hours.
for sure. And that's just
Yeah.
because that's a value of mine, balance. And I know that if I don't stay in balance, then I fall into disruption, and that turns to chaos and drama and stress. And so if I want to stay away from that, I know that I have to try and set these as a core value and remind myself that these are important to me, and think back on the times that I let myself get into disarray. And that helps to push me back into that habit, building the new routine. And so
Hmm.
it's hard at first. It didn't happen overnight. I used to be the CEO that worked 12, 16 hours, and some days I still do, but it's definitely a lot more time for meditative moments, broken out throughout the day if I need to, into smaller pieces, or, before I go to bed, kind of having that daily reset, and in the morning, kind of having that daily visualization and designing the day that I want to have.
Okay. Let's want to shift gears for a second. From my understanding, you began your career in interior design, and in my mind at least, a very different field, right? You've now built a company that talks about chronic stress, mental well-being in the workplace. How do we get here?
Yeah. So the genesis of creating Peak Mind was I hit burnout at 10 years into my career. So the first 10 years of being a CEO, I was just go, go, go. I was working in 28 different states, building fantastic designs from Los Angeles to Florida to North Carolina, you name it. And realizing that Alicia had gotten lost in the CEO title. And so I took time in my personal life to say, okay, I need to reset. How do I want to spend the rest of my 10 years? And in that time of reflection, I said, what are the core things that I spend my time doing? What do I love doing and what do I not like doing? So what I reflected in my corporate interior design, I realized that I'm a social scientist. To be a corporate interior designer, you have to be able to ask your board of directors, your CEOs, your employees that work in these buildings. You have to ask them what they need to be happy to thrive in their workplace. Do they need conference rooms? Do they need break rooms? So, in asking those questions, I realized that I loved kind of understanding humans, understanding what motivates them, understanding how to help them when they don't realize they need help. And so that was kind of the beginning, the foundation of understanding that I love mental well-being. And so I went spent 5 years of research and development while doing my day job as a corporate designer, researching neuroscience, neuropsychology, the understanding of how humans make decisions, when they don't make decisions, what broke down and what needs to change. Because again, as a designer, you need people to tell you what they want in their office space in order for them to be successful. Because I have, I can spend $20 million of a client's budget, but I need to understand what they need, right? It's not my office space. So I need them to be able to share and talk to me and be truthful and open and honest. And that just really wasn't happening. And I realized amongst a lot of my companies that their employees just didn't either feel psychologically safe enough to offer what they truly want in an office, or they just didn't know how to communicate it. And these are grown adults. And so when I realized that this was a major problem, I said, yes, it's fantastic to build, beautiful buildings that look like Google campuses, but it would be awesome if people that occupy those spaces could also have beautiful mindsets and purpose and quality of life while they're at work. And I said, wouldn't it be amazing if both of those things could exist and be sold to a company? And that's what I did.
Absolutely. That's awesome. I think you're combining a passion for mental well-being, for trying to understand people, right? To helping people become happy with the knowledge, the expertise, the understanding that you have of interior design. And I think um, there's something beautiful about almost envisioning the mind as a building, as something that
Yeah.
we can kind of reshape and restructure in a lot of different ways, and can be redesigned countless times throughout life.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah,
and
it
and I think
can.
when you think about it like that, it's like it makes a little bit more sense. And yeah, we have stress, and maybe your mind's kind of a rundown shack, and you can build it up, and you can build really beautiful things. And I think that's just an awesome image that kind of came to my mind when you were speaking.
Yeah, I love that. I think I'm going to start saying that on stage. That's a,
There
a
you go.
great blend of those two. And with neuroplasticity, the more that we know about the brain, just in the last several years, the more that we can understand that I think there was an article I read about 10 to 20% of silent synapses. Right. At some point, scientists thought that our brains couldn't evolve more, couldn't grow new thoughts
Hmm.
once, it was formed, couldn't grow new behaviors. And then they realized there's these silent synapses sitting out there that until they're sparked, until they're ignited, they're just not going to turn on. But there's a way that we can turn those on by being exposed to new concepts, to, some people microdose to kind of open up some of those parts of the brain that maybe had been shut down from trauma or lack of exposure to. And so I think it's beautiful thinking about it in architecture, because it's almost as if our brains are, for the most part, a blank canvas. There are some structures of the brain that are hard to, rewire or reconnect. And, you're born with some states of being in our brain, but there are the ability, the more that we know about the brain, there's a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, we kind of have foundation set in a sense, right?
Hmm.
And you mentioned the limbic system, our fight or flight kind of stress response. Like that is something that doesn't change. Like that's something that always will exist. There's always going to be stress. We're always going to react to things in certain ways, and have those responses. That's what makes us human. That's what allows us to survive. That's what gives us those instincts, right? But if we can build on top of those things, and we can change the other ways that we think, and how we process the information, and how we process our stress, and how we deal with it, and recover from it. And I think that's where all the intricacies come in,
For
of
sure.
the mind, and of all the beautiful parts of the way that human beings sort of function.
For sure.
Can we talk for a moment? You mentioned kind of your journey, as a CEO working crazy hours. Can we just dive into that for a second? What was that like? Where have you, how do you see the changes in your life now, having, worked through that, having set those sort of boundaries, finding that balance with yourself? Um, what does it look, what does your life look like that's different today?
Yeah, well, I show up for my team with a lot more compassion and empathy and sympathy. I still have teammates that will be late for a meeting or something happened in their world and they didn't get there on time or couldn't get something complete and they're over apologizing. They're so upset with themselves, they're beating themselves down. And I have the grace and the sympathy and compassion to say, it's okay. Let's get it done. Let's figure out how we move from here. But I don't beat somebody down. Not to say that I did that before, but just coming from a state of being kind of at my own peace and understanding and grace and all that within, I can show up for others and allow them to be their true selves. I hear that a lot from friends and people who have worked for me and employees saying, you're the first person that's truly seen me. Right, and so I think in that stillness and in that calmness and in my own purpose, then I can truly see somebody's value. I can see what somebody's struggling with, and I have the patience that I or the tools where I can offer that suggestion to them in a creative, criticism type way. And so I think I just show up just genuinely in a different state of being, having done my own work versus when I was just doing the CEO job, before I hit burnout, just go, 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 focused on my own deadlines. That caused a little bit more drama and chaos because I was stressed. And so, yeah, emotional contagion's real, right? If
Yeah.
somebody walks in a room and they're a little afraid, that could rub off on other people, especially if you don't know how to protect your own energy, your own space.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you feel like when you were in, that kind of earlier stages when you were still trying to figure everything out and you're working 16 hours, um, do you feel like you weren't as good of a leader, weren't as good of a friend, as a connector of people?
For sure.
I think it's beautiful that people say that you are seeing them, but like you said, I mean, that's hard to do, right? When there's so much weighing on you already to be able to look at someone and see them and understand them and connect with them. It's like, well, you didn't get it done, but I worked until 2 a.m. to get it done, and so you should have got it done too. And I think that that's a kind of a human response that we have sometimes, but it's unfair in a sense because it's you're asking someone to do something that you did but what you did wasn't the right thing to do in the first place.
Yeah, for sure. And vice versa. A lot of it, my shift was that I set boundaries with my people because I was
Mm,
staying up till midnight, 1 a.m. doing their work that I didn't have the courage to tell them that, hey, this is your job and I'm not going to stay up till midnight anymore. And so I had that shift in my head that said, why am I sitting in the office alone at 1 a.m. in the morning still getting, the collective project done? I said, something's got to change. So, whether it's yourself or you have to ask of others to show up in a different way, it can go either way.
right. And that, I mean, I think that's leadership in a sense, right? It's understanding people, it's connecting to people, but it's also asking more of them. It's saying, hey, I know you can do more than this. I know you have more potential than this. Let me see what you could do, right? Let's do this together, and let's see what your potential is, because I think people often it's easy to um, get into the monotony of like I'm just doing the same things, and I'm getting by, right? And I think it's great leadership is all about, right? Can I support you in a way that allows you to be like, I can do more than get by. I
For
can
sure.
I can really, do something great. I can create something great. Um, I could feel better about myself because wow, look what I'm able to do, right?
Yeah,
When I'm given the tools, I'm given the support that I need to be able to kind of go out and be my full self.
for sure.
I guess in your life, who has been someone or maybe multiple people who have inspired you in in your own sort of journey, when it comes to becoming a better leader, when it comes to becoming finding sort of peace, and escaping that endless loop, um, of stress and anxiety.
I don't know if it was necessarily a person at the time that came about. I think it was sitting in silence. So maybe my higher spirit, higher being,
Sure.
that definitely spoke to me and said there's a different path for you and it can be easier. And so I think that's where it came from me. And yes, there's been mentors that have shared voices, and there's been great experts like Joe Dispenza, Robert Sapolsky, people that maybe I have not met, but that I look to for some of their guidance and understanding of how the brain and body and mindset work. So that's pretty much been my journey is self-reflection and going into kind of some of the scientists, the Andrew Huberman, those type of folks have really led my journey, especially in the last 11 years.
Yeah, that's powerful because I mean, to be able to do something like that, to drive something like that internally within yourself is a difficult thing. And I think we struggle with that a lot in society. A lot of people do to find that drive. It's like maybe there's a problem, but it's hard to really do something about it, right? Take that step.
For sure. The world is noisy, so it's
Mm,
hard to sit in silence and just listen to yourself or listen to what your thoughts, your brain. Our brains actually need silence. They need kind of that dumb time, that Netflix and chill where we're just not being so brainy. It just kind of needs that to be able to think new thoughts. We're so bombarded with thoughts and things coming at us that when do we really sit and just let it kind of create or tell us something new or think of something new. It's rare.
yeah. When do you feel like you realized that that was important? Is this something you found in your research, or is this something you kind of came up with, like, oh my God, if I take a second and just sit and with myself, look at how much it matters.
Yeah, it was a while ago. I remember I say I kind of took a year off of life. I
Right.
went to work, got home, and just I turned off the TV. I didn't watch the news. I wasn't on social media. I didn't go to family events. I just kind of took a year
Wow.
off of the typical things that we are busy doing, and I went inward. I mean, I sat in meditation for hours, sometimes 3 hours. I remember going to a Buddhist temple and sitting with monks and meditating for 8 hours. Can you imagine sitting in silence
That's
for eight
crazy.
hours? Right? But
That's
I just
crazy.
had to go through that kind of peeling away from the world to figure out who I was and to be able to heal the areas of myself that needed healing and to focus on building up the values and the legacy and the thoughts and the purpose and passion and really nurturing myself. And a lot of times we can't do that when we're busy out in the world.
Yeah, of course. Is that something that a practice that you feel like has been helpful for you and is important in terms of meditation,
For
and
sure.
sitting with yourself?
For sure. And there's so many different types of meditation out there, right? There's hundreds of different types. And so sometimes the body scan is the most important for me, just feeling what's going on. Where was I wounded today? Where did I overexert my energy? What am I struggling with? And so that's, if I don't do any meditation at all, that's the main one that I'll focus on. And then giving yourself that quiet meditation or the non-sleep deep rest. Those types of meditations have been super helpful for me. But I tell people there are so many on YouTube. You can go to, the podcast channels now have different
Yeah,
meditations where there is plenty of opportunity to get free resources out there and try different ones that may resonate with yourself.
yeah. It's hard to start, no? For me, it's always been. And people t tell me like, "Oh, you should meditate." I'm like, "I know," and I don't do it.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, man, I know I should do it, and it's oh, it only takes you don't have to do it for 30 minutes. You don't have to do it for 10 minutes. Here, I have a quick 20-minute meditation video. Just do this, and it's like, yeah, I'll do it. And then it's like, oh man, it's 11 p.m. I gotta go to bed. Well, I'll do it tomorrow, right?
Yeah,
And that becomes days and days become weeks and it becomes months and oh, I forgot about the video and I haven't done it.
yeah,
It's hard. It's hard to start. How do you
it is.
start?
Just like everything, building any new habit is hard, right?
Yeah.
Anything you want to change in your life can possibly be hard. Give
Hmm.
yourself rewards. Again, back to that dopamine, oxytocin. Our brain wants the positive rewards. It wants the dopamine hits.
Yeah.
And so one neuroscience, scientist talked about, it might have been Sapolsky in his book, Behave. He talks about, or somebody, one of them talks about, give yourself little mini rewards. if your goal is to start meditating every day and build that habit at, 30 days, 60 days, whatever it is, start small. You did it once this week, give yourself one, little piece of chocolate. You did it twice this week, give yourself two Skittles, right? Whatever that
Awesome.
is, give yourself mini rewards because our body needs those small wins, and then set a big win at the end. So say after 30 days of doing it consistently, I'm going to do whatever, right? Set a milestone that's the big
Eat the whole packet
reward.
of Skittles.
Eat the whole packet. Get two
There you go.
packets. Go wild.
Oh my God. This is not health advice. No, I'm
Yeah,
kidding.
no. Skittles, no.
That's awesome. No, that's great. I mean, I think, having those rewards is huge,
For
right?
sure.
That reminder that like, okay, I did something.
Yeah.
It's so easy to and we talked about this earlier, right? But it's so easy to just, okay, I did it, and there's nothing at the end, and
Hmm.
it's like, well, it's like it's so hard to kind of push yourself to keep doing it.
Yeah.
And we kind of thrive off that instant gratification that like, yes, immediately, I did something. Um, and so kind of almost artificially creating that environment where you can feel that gratification, feel that kind of spark in a
For
sense.
sure. Yeah. Ask a
It
friend
builds
to
the.
be that accountability buddy and tell them,
Hmm.
hey, if I call you and tell you I meditated 2 times, say this to me. Give them a
Yeah.
statement that's going to make you feel proud about yourself, right? Because
All
sometimes we
right.
need to coach them into how to really see us. I say
Hmm.
the core of humans, we want to be seen, heard, and valued, but most of us don't even know what that would even look like. We haven't had enough experiences of that positive, those positive moments to be able to say, hey, can you see me this way? That gives me joy, right? And so then we're always searching for something, but we don't even know what we're searching for. We're just
Yeah.
scrolling until we get the next hit, but we don't truly know what that was, right? So then you're just doom scrolling even more. Or so it's finding, again, going inward to really know what you need to be successful, know what that, if you need to tell your buddy or loved one to give you the Skittles or whatever it is, right?
There you go.
You want that to be given to you because your love language is getting gifts, right? Understand yourself
Hmm.
enough to be able to ask that of others is helpful when you're trying to build something new, because accountability, it is hard to do it alone.
Yeah, absolutely. Seen, heard, and valued. Where does that come from? Is that something that you have kind of come up with in your thinking of how of people?
I've come across it. It is not something I think that I just created. I'm sure it exists out there. I say when I'm teaching people to reflect on it, somewhat it comes from the ikigai, which is, how to the things that I do, the things I earned, that bring me money, the things that fulfill me, how do they all overlap? And I think that's kind of where I started to really think about what do humans need to feel successful. And, I say heard is like if I was able to stand on my soapbox and say something. I'm sure internally, we all have something that we are so passionate about that, like, I just want to say this to 10 people and I want them all to clap for me,
There
right?
you
That's
go.
being
Yeah.
heard for something. So that's a good way to think about, what am I so passionate about that I would stand on a soapbox or stand on a stage and tell to others?
Mm.
Because if you, know that, then you can build the rooms and build the spaces and ask that of others to say, hey, I kind of have a passion for talking about this. If there's ever an
Hmm.
opportunity for me to lead the team and be the subject matter expert on it, or to help guide this, discussion, or if you guys ever want to learn more about it, I'd love to talk about it. And then that builds more opportunities to really feel fulfilled.
Yeah. Can I ask you what is your soapbox thing? If you had to just come up with something, or if you have something that you think about often.
It's everything we've talked about: mental well-being,
Yeah,
overcoming stress. That once I realized, that those were the two words it kind of drives everything I do.
absolutely. You mentioned earlier two types of stress, and I want to tie back to that. External stress, right? The workplace, the environment, people around you. Internal stress, things that have happened past, kind of bottled up emotions. Can you talk about for a moment just the differences between those two things?
Definitely. Internal stresses, we don't know how to cope with our anger. We get
Mm.
angry from something external, right? I mean, tons of things could potentially make you angry. Somebody cut you off in traffic or doesn't listen to you, or doesn't see you, right? In relationships, a lot of times that inner conflict comes with like, gosh, I wish they would just truly understand me. I wish they would see me for who I am, right? And so inward, we're processing a lot of emotions. We could feel abandoned. I mean, there's hundreds of things that we could feel: sad, scared, alone. And the outside is coming from, maybe that person just doesn't know how to sit with us and hold space for us. And so that's kind of an easy depiction of external stresses and internal stresses. But there's so many different variations of that.
Would you say that maybe external stresses are easier to work through because internal stresses, you kind of have to dig a little bit deeper?
Yeah, except if you go to hypnotherapy for internal stresses, I say that's the number one quickest way to get to know
Yeah, right?
where you're wounded, because hypnotherapy, it's a therapist that puts you into a very deep meditative state. You're still awake. You're not going to balk like a chicken, like we've seen on TV, right? You're not going to bark, like a dog, right? But you get to that space of really just being in that meditative space, which is so hard for so many people to get to. And so having somebody like a hypnotherapist guide you to that space and then talking through emotions, you uncover and you go deeper than you really have gone before. I've gone several times because every modality that I like to talk about, I like to experience myself. And after 20 years of doing this inner work, I said, the second time I went, or the third time, whatever it was, I said, oh, I'm probably not going to get much out of this, but I wanted to try a different hypnotherapist. I went to somebody that was very spiritual, kind of more religious based, and then I wanted to go to a non-religious just to have, because our users are very much, in either bucket. And
Yeah.
so I wasn't expecting to get a lot out of it, but I was crying from something that was unlocked in me when I was a kid, right? A hidden little trauma moment where I felt scared and I didn't feel seen. And so being able to unlock that, I had no idea that I had that hidden in me. So getting to that space where somebody else is guiding you through that, and then you come out of, you get out of the meditative state, and then you talk through the talk therapy, that really helped. I was able to overcome that one trauma moment just in that one session, right? And a lot of hypnotherapists see people, 6 times when trying to work through smoking to get to the inner root of, why am I addicted to this? Why can't I let go of this person? And so I hear a lot of people see success within, 6 sessions of hypnotherapy. So that may work for some, and maybe others need longer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to quote something, actually, your LinkedIn bio, because I thought this was a very interesting sentence. You write, I have spent the last 10 years studying neuropsychology and ways to lower workplace stress because at my core, I believe that we all have superpowers, and if we find them, life will be so much better.
Oh, yeah.
I can't fly. I don't think you can fly. What are we talking about?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that I can see people, the fact that people get so moved by just my simple interactions with them. And in the moment, I don't realize it, but whether it's 6 months later or 2 years later or 5 years later, I get a huge lengthy text or email from somebody that says, you really set, my life on a different course because you saw me in that moment and you were able to guide me, right? That's my superpower. That's beautiful, being able to hear other people say that moment that I worked with you, or that small brief interaction was able to really unlock this. When I get off stages speaking, I have people pull me aside and say, wow, what you talked about really, it felt like you saw me, like you really were speaking to me. Some people, say, thank you. That was confirmation to make this major life change that I have been, on the fence about, and I have been dragging my feet. But hearing you speak about that and knowing that the beauty and the possibility of being free and having fulfillment and being at peace, that I now know what I need to do to take action to move in that way. So I think it's yes, it may be flying, but it may also just being able to give grace to others, to
Absolutely.
hold space for them, because those are rare qualities, unfortunately, in our society.
Absolutely. It's got to feel good, right? To know that you have unlocked this superpower of yourself. You've kind of opened up this gateway into um, almost realizing yourself fully and what you're
Sure.
capable of and how you're able to impact people. Obviously, I'm sure the compliments are great, but even beyond that, just knowing that, like, look at what I could do. look at how much I'm able to help people, right? Really, and impact people and reach people in ways that I couldn't before because of the
Hmm.
work, right? The work that you've done, the research, the self-care, the balancing of your schedule, everything kind of culminating in this in these moments of people telling you, "Wow, look at how you helped me. This look at all these things that you made me feel."
For sure.
There's I think that connection is so powerful.
It is.
I ended every interview with the same question. What are some words you choose to live by and why?
It would definitely be to don't let anything interrupt your sleep. That's so fundamental. So do whatever you can to protect that. And it would be find your purpose because within those two things, everything else is so much easier. Everything you're going to deal with in the day is going to be so much easier if you have those two things.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. McCoy. This was amazing.
You're welcome. Thank
So great to
you.
have you.